heavy rain, thunder, and a distorted bus engine sound. Narrator: the world we see during the day is a lie. The real world wakes up when the sun goes down. Have you ever traveled alone on a highway at 2 a.m.? The road stretches like an endless black tongue, waiting to taste your fear. Tonight's story is not just a story. It is a scream from the past. A young nurse, a lonely bus, and a forest filled with ancient, hungry jinns. This is the account of Tania's last journey. Segment 1. The Terminal of Shadows. The Saidabad bus terminal was a chaotic mess of mud and flickering neon lights. It was May 6th. The air was thick with the smell of rain. Tania stood there, holding her bag tightly. She felt a strange shiver down her spine, not from the cold, but as if someone's cold, dead eyes were watching her from the shadows of the parked buses. She boarded the Swarnalata bus. As soon as she stepped in, the air inside felt heavy, like someone had sucked out all the oxygen. The driver, Nurazman, looked at her through the cracked mirror. His eyes didn't reflect the light. They were like two black holes. Beside him, the helper, Lalmia, was whispering to something in the corner of the bus. There was no one there, yet he was nodding and smiling a twisted, toothless smile. Tania sat in seat B3. The bus started with a roar that sounded more like a dying animal than an engine. Segment 2. The Loneliness of the Highway. As the bus left Dhaka, the city lights faded into a dull, orange glow. One by one, passengers got off. A man with a pale face at Tangi, an old woman who smelled like incense at Gazapur. By the time they hit the Kisharganj highway, Tania was the only one left. The silence was deafening. Thud, thud, thud. The bus hit a pothole, and for a second, the interior lights flickered. In that split second of darkness, Tania saw something. In the back seat, where it was supposed to be empty, sat a tall, thin figure. It was dressed in rags, and its skin was the color of ash. It had no face, just a smooth, gray surface where eyes and a mouth should be. Tania's heart stopped. She blinked, and the lights came back on. The seat was empty. Or was it? She could still feel a cold breath on the back of her neck. Segment 3. The Jinn of Gazaria Forest. The bus suddenly turned. This wasn't the way to Kadiati. The bus was now entering the Gazaria Forest. The trees here were different. They weren't green, they were charcoal black, and their branches moved like the legs of a giant spider. Driver, where are you going? Tania shouted, her voice trembling. Nurazman didn't turn back. His head slowly rotated 180 degrees while his body stayed facing the steering wheel. His neck made a sickening cracking sound. Snap. Crack. As his face now looked directly at Tania. We are going home, Tania, he said. But it wasn't his voice. It was a deep, guttural growl that sounded like stones grinding together. Behind her, Lalmia began to grow taller. His limbs stretched out, his fingers turning into long, sharp claws. The smell of rotting meat filled the bus. This wasn't a crime of men anymore. This was a ritual of jinns. Segment 4. The Final Struggle. The bus door flew open, but there was no road outside. There was only a swirling vortex of black mist. The Nishi, the night spirits, were calling her name. Tania, Tania. The voices sounded like her mother, her brother, her friends. She fought. She used her medical kit, throwing whatever she could find, but the helper's hands were now like cold iron. He grabbed her hair, his eyes glowing with a demonic red light. The forest needs a soul, and you are the chosen one, he hissed. Tania took a deep breath and jumped. She didn't jump to the road. She jumped into the unknown. As her head hit the ground, the last thing she saw was the bus transforming into a giant, skeletal beast that vanished into the trees. Audio cues, sudden hospital monitor flatline sound, distant metal gurney rolling, and dripping water. Narrator, death is not the end. Sometimes, it's just a change of address. When Tania's cold body was brought back to the very hospital where she once saved lives, the building itself seemed to reject her presence. The walls began to sweat cold moisture, and the patients in ward number 7 started screaming in their sleep. They weren't screaming from pain. They were screaming because they saw who was standing at the foot of their beds. Segment 1. The Night Shift at the Morgue. The basement of the hospital was a place of silence and shadows. Rahim, the old night guard, had spent 30 years surrounded by the dead. He used to say, "The dead don't talk, they only listen." But on the night Tania's body arrived, the dead started talking. It was 2:45 a.m. Rahim was sitting in his small wooden chair, sipping tea. Suddenly, the temperature in the morgue dropped so low that his breath turned into white mist. Clang! The sound of a heavy metal drawer sliding open echoed through the hall. Rahim froze. He knew that drawer. It was number 14, Tanya's drawer. He walked slowly, his flashlight trembling in his hand. When the light hit the drawer, his heart nearly stopped. The body bag was unzipped. Tanya was sitting upright. Her skin was a sickly blue, and her hair was matted with dried blood and forest leaves. But it wasn't her face that terrified him. It was the fact that she was stitching her own wounds with a needle and thread made of human hair. She turned her head, not just her neck, but her entire upper body, and whispered, "The bus is still waiting, Rahim. Are you coming?" Segment 2, The Shadow in the Elevator. The terror moved from the basement to the upper floors. Nurse Selena, Tanya's best friend, was taking the elevator to the 4th floor. The elevator stopped at the 2nd floor, but no one was there. Just as the doors were closing, a hand, long, thin, and covered in black fur, blocked the sensor. A tall figure stepped in. It was wearing a doctor's coat, but it was nearly 7 feet tall. It had to hunch over to fit inside. Selena kept her eyes down, her heart racing. When she looked at the polished metal of the elevator door, she saw the reflection. The doctor had no legs. It was floating 3 inches off the floor. "Have you seen Tanya?" the creature asked. Its voice sounded like a chorus of crows. Selena couldn't speak. She felt a sharp pain in her ear, and when she touched it, she realized her ear was bleeding. The creature leaned in close, its breath smelling of ancient earth and rotted wood. "She belongs to the Forest King now. We all do." The elevator doors opened, and the figure vanished into a puff of black smoke, leaving behind a trail of dead, black moths. Segment 3, The Ritual of the Jinn. By the 3rd night, the hospital was in total chaos. The lights wouldn't stay on. The head doctor called in a local Pir Baba, or shaman, to cleanse the building. The shaman entered ward number 7, carrying a bowl of blessed water and incense. He stopped in the middle of the room and began to chant. Suddenly, all the windows in the ward shattered at once. Crash! The glass didn't fall outside. It flew inward, circling the shaman like a whirlwind. From the ceiling, 3 dark entities, Jinns of the Hamzad type, descended. They were shadows with glowing green eyes and teeth like jagged glass. "You cannot save this place," the Jinns roared. The sound was so loud that the patient's ears began to bleed. The shaman tried to throw the blessed water, but the water turned into blood midair. The Jinns grabbed the shaman's shadow and began to pull it away from his body. He screamed as his very soul was being stretched. In that moment, a figure appeared at the doorway. It was Tanya, but she was surrounded by a white, ethereal flame. She wasn't there to kill. She was there to claim what was hers. Segment 4, The Vengeance Begins. Tanya looked at the Jinns and spoke a word in a language that was older than time. The Jinns recoiled in fear. Even the dark spirits of the forest feared a soul that had been wrongly taken. She turned to the shaman and said, "Tell the driver, tell the helper, there is no prison in this world that can keep me out. I am the darkness they created." As she spoke, the hospital walls began to crack. The floorboards ripped open, revealing a bottomless pit filled with the same black mist from the Gazaria Forest. Tanya stepped into the pit, and the Jinns followed her, dragged down by an invisible force. The ward went silent. The lights came back on, but on every wall, there was a bloody handprint, Tanya's signature. Audio cues, heavy iron doors slamming, dragging chains, a low-pitched demonic growl, and water dripping in a hollow cell. Narrator: Justice in the world of men is often slow, but justice in the world of shadows is instantaneous. The driver, Nuruzaman, and his helper, Lalmia, thought that the iron bars of the Kisharganj district jail would keep them safe from the consequences of that night. They were wrong. Bars can stop a human, but they cannot stop a soul that has been forged in the fires of betrayal. In cell number 103, the walls were about to start breathing. Segment 1. The Midnight Visitor in cell 103. It was the middle of a moonless night. The prison was a graveyard of broken dreams. Nuruzaman was lying on his thin, dirty mat, staring at the ceiling. Suddenly, the shadows in the corner of his cell began to thicken. They didn't just move, they pulsed, like a dark heart beating. Scratch, scratch, scratch. The sound came from under his bed. It sounded like long fingernails scraping against the cold concrete. Nuruzaman froze. He tried to call for the guard, but his voice was gone. It felt as if an invisible hand was squeezing his throat. From the shadows, a figure emerged. It was Tania, but she wasn't alone. Standing behind her were 3 Ifrit Jinns, towering entities with skin like scorched earth and eyes that burned with a cold, blue flame. "Did you think the walls would hide you?" Tania whispered. Her voice didn't come from her mouth. It echoed directly inside Nuruzaman's brain. The Jinns stepped forward, their breath smelling of sulfur and ancient graves. One of them reached out and touched Nuruzaman's chest. Where its finger touched, his skin turned black and began to wither. He wanted to scream, but the only sound that came out was the rattling of his own teeth. Segment 2. The Helper's Transformation. In the next cell, Lalmia was experiencing a different kind of horror. He had always been a superstitious man, but nothing could have prepared him for this. The air in his cell turned into thick, black smoke. Out of the smoke, the Swarnalata bus appeared. Not the whole bus, but just the front grille and the headlights. The headlights flickered on, blinding him with a sickly, yellow light. The horn honked, a long, distorted blast that sounded like 1,000 souls screaming in agony. Hununk! Lalmia scrambled into the corner, sobbing. "Please, I just did what I was told." The bus door opened, and out crawled dozens of Kyle, lower-level shape-shifting Jinns. They looked like humans with reversed feet and elongated limbs. They began to crawl over him, their touch freezing his blood. They weren't there to kill him, not yet. They were there to make him relive every second of Tania's terror. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the forest, he felt the fall, and he heard the laughter of the demons that had taken his soul. Segment 3. The Ghost Bus of Gazaria. While the criminals were being tortured in their cells, something else was happening on the Dhaka-Kisharganj highway. Truck drivers began reporting a ghost bus that appeared out of the mist near Gazaria. It had no driver, no passengers, and no engine sound. It just floated 6 inches above the road, its interior glowing with a haunting white light. One driver, a man named Sabhan, tried to overtake the bus. As he pulled alongside, he looked into the windows. Every seat was occupied by a skeleton wearing nurses' uniforms. In the driver's seat sat a Jinn with 3 heads, each head looking in a different direction. The bus didn't follow the road. It drove straight through the trees, disappearing into the solid trunks of the ancient forest. The locals started calling it the Death Express. They said that if the bus stopped for you, you were already dead. The police tried to investigate, but every time they reached the spot, all they found were fresh rose petals and the smell of hospital antiseptic on the asphalt. Segment 4. The Shaman's Last Warning. The prison authorities, desperate to stop the madness, brought back the shaman. He stood outside Nuruzaman's cell, his face pale with fear. He looked at the driver, who was now unrecognizable. His hair had turned white, and his skin was covered in ancient symbols that seemed to move on their own. "There is no ritual for this," the shaman whispered to the warden. "This is not a simple haunting. The Jinns of the forest have made a pact with the victim's soul. They are not just punishing the man, they are reclaiming the land. This prison sits on an ancient burial ground of the Jinns, and Tania has become their queen." Suddenly, the lights in the entire prison went out. A cold wind blew through the corridors, carrying the scent of rain and diesel. The shaman fell to his knees, praying for mercy. But the only response was the sound of a bus door opening in the darkness and a woman's soft, chilling laugh. "The journey," the voice said, "has only just begun." Audio cues, deep echoing chants, the sound of a heavy wooden gavel hitting stone, howling wolves, and the crackling of an eternal fire. Narrator: mankind believes that justice is served in buildings made of brick and mortar under the gaze of a human judge. But there is a higher court, a court that meets in the fold between our world and the realm of the Jinns. It is called the Darbari Zulmat, the Court of Darkness. Tonight, the walls of the prison have dissolved, and the criminals find themselves standing before a jury that has no eyes, only memories of every sin ever committed. Segment 1. The Vanishing Walls. At exactly 3 a.m., the lights in the Kisharganj jail didn't just flicker, they turned a deep, bruised purple. The iron bars of Nuruzaman and Lalmia's cells began to melt like wax. The concrete floor beneath them transformed into a vast, obsidian plain under a sky with 3 moons. They were no longer in a prison. They were in the heart of the Gazaria Forest, but a version of it that existed 1,000 years ago. In front of them sat 12 tall figures shrouded in robes made of living shadows. These were the Jinn, the ancient judges of the spirit world. Their voices didn't vibrate the air. They vibrated the very bones of the 2 men. "You spilled the blood of an innocent on our sacred soil," the lead judge spoke. His face was a void, yet New Rosamond felt 1,000 needles piercing his soul. "The laws of men may give you life in prison, but the laws of the Jinns demand a debt of 1,000 lifetimes." Segment 2. The Evidence of the Unseen. Suddenly, the air filled with floating, glowing objects. These were the Methil, spiritual records of the crime. Tanya's blood, glowing like rubies, floated in the air. The screams she uttered were captured in jars of black glass, playing back over and over, vibrating the ground. But then, something even more terrifying happened. The police case files from the human world began to manifest in the air. As the judges watched, the ink on the papers began to crawl like insects, forming new words. The names of the witnesses changed into the names of the Jinns who had watched the crime from the trees. The lead judge raised a hand, and the ground split open. Out crawled the Hamzad, the shadow doubles, of New Rosamond and Lalmia. These shadows began to testify against their human counterparts, revealing every dark thought and every moment of malice they had felt. The men tried to lie, but their own shadows reached out and strangled the words in their throats. Segment 3. The Sentence of the Soul. The verdict is reached. The voices echoed in unison. The 12 judges stood up, growing to the height of the trees. "For the crime of taking a life on the path of the Guardians, you shall not die. Death is too easy. Instead, you shall be Zindadargor, buried alive within your own bodies." The Jinns began to chant a curse in a language that sounded like grinding tectonic plates. New Rosamond felt his skin hardening, turning into something resembling the bark of a tree. His eyes became fixed, unable to blink. Lalmia felt his legs merging into the ground, his fingers stretching into thorny branches. They were being turned into Derek Timaloan, the accursed trees. They would remain in the Gazaria Forest, conscious and feeling every bit of rain, wind, and heat for 500 years. They would see every traveler who passed by, but they would never be able to speak or move. They became the very thing they used to hide their crime, the forest itself. Segment 4. The Return of the Silence. Back in the human world, the morning sun rose over the Kisherganj jail. When the guards went to check cell 103, they found it completely empty. There were no signs of a breakout. The locks were still intact. The only thing left on the floor were 2 piles of dry, black soil and a single nurse's cap resting on the driver's mat. The police files in the station were found to be blank. Every page, every photo, every signature had vanished, replaced by a faint scent of jasmine and wood smoke. It was as if the universe had decided that some crimes are so foul, they must be erased from human memory and handed over to the shadows. The warden resigned that day. He told his wife that he saw a bus in the parking lot that morning, a bus that wasn't there when he blinked. And in the window of the bus, a young woman was waving goodbye, finally heading to a destination where no man could ever hurt her again. Audio cues, soft, mournful flute music, the sound of autumn leaves crunching, a distant bus horn fading into the mist, and a final, echoing heartbeat. Narrator: every journey, no matter how dark, must find its end. But in the world of the supernatural, an ending is often just a new form of existence. The prison cells are empty, the legal files have turned to dust, and the names of the guilty are being erased by time. Yet, if you travel through the heart of the Gazaria Forest today, you will find 2 trees that stand apart from the rest. They are twisted, leafless, and they seem to weep a thick, black sap that smells of diesel and fear. This is the final chapter of our descent. Segment 1. The Living Trees of Gazaria. Locals avoid the area near the old highway curve after sunset. They call it the Derek Timaloan, the Accursed Grove. Scientists have tried to study these 2 trees, but their equipment always malfunctions. Cameras capture only static, and thermometers drop to sub-zero temperatures even in the heat of a Bangladeshi summer. The village elders say that if you press your ear against the bark of these trees during a full moon, you can hear a muffled, rhythmic sound. It's the sound of two hearts beating, very slowly, once every hour. These are not trees. They are the vessels of New Rosamond and Lalmia, trapped in a wooden prison, forced to watch the highway for all eternity. They see every Swarnalata bus that passes by, and every time the horn honks, the trees shudder as if in great pain. They are the silent guardians of the road, a living warning to any who would dare to harbor evil in their hearts. Segment 2. The Final Blessing. While the guilty suffer their eternal sentence, what of the innocent? 1 year after the incident, the people of the village decided to build a small prayer hall near the spot where Tania was found. On the night they finished the construction, a strange phenomenon occurred. A soft, white light descended from the sky, illuminating the entire forest. It wasn't the harsh light of a bulb, but a gentle, ethereal glow that felt like a warm embrace. Witnesses say they saw a figure in a white nurse's uniform walking towards the light. She wasn't bloodied or broken anymore. She looked radiant, her face filled with a peace that surpassed all understanding. The Jinns of the forest, the same terrifying entities that had served as her army of vengeance, gathered at the edge of the woods. They didn't growl or roar. They bowed their heads in respect. Tania had not only conquered her fear, she had conquered the darkness itself. With a final look toward her home, she stepped into the light and vanished. The floral scent of jasmine lingered in the air for 7 days and 7 nights. Segment 3. The Legacy of the Swarnalata. The Swarnalata bus company eventually shut down. The remaining buses in their fleet started behaving strangely. Engines would start by themselves in the middle of the night. The steering wheels would turn as if guided by invisible hands. Drivers refused to work, claiming they saw a young woman sitting in seat B3, staring at them with eyes that held the secrets of the universe. Today, those buses sit in a scrapyard, rusted and forgotten. But legend says that once a year, on the anniversary of that fateful night, a spectral bus appears on the highway. It picks up those who are lost, those who are mistreated, and those who have no one to protect them. It is no longer a bus of death, but a vessel of protection, a ghost light in the dark for the vulnerable. Segment 4. The narrator's final warning. As we conclude this 90-minute journey into the abyss, I want you to look around you. Are you truly alone in your room? That shadow in the corner, that slight draft of cold air, that faint scent of antiseptic. Is it just your imagination? Or is it a reminder that the veil between our world and theirs is thinner than you think? Tania's story is a reminder that justice is a force of nature. You can hide from the police, you can lie to a judge, and you can bury your secrets in the mud. But the earth remembers. The trees watch. And the Jinns never forget a debt. Thank you for listening to this mega edition of our podcast. May your journeys be safe. May your roads be lit. And may you never have to board the midnight bus.
Subscribe now.
Sleep well.
Join our community for exclusive content.